Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, a production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy. I'm going to take you through Thursday's action around the SEC, the final opening day of weekend series for the regular season for the SEC. I'll take you through that. We'll take a peek ahead at Friday's games as well. Before we get into anything specific, though, I have to remind you that this episode of Weekend Waypoints and every episode of Weekend Waypoints is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, which is your new home for Jordan Brand. Gear up today and take flight. Make your play in the latest head-to-toe Jordan gear for the entire family. Available in-store and at academy.com. Unleash your greatness with Jordan Brand, now at Academy. All right, busy day in the SEC on Thursday night. Texas, clinches the SEC regular season title. That happened. We had teams that needed wins to secure postseason berths, get them. We had teams looking to host, get wins they needed. We had a handful of close games. We had a couple of walk-offs, a lot going on around the league. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's talk about my games of the day, and I actually have two of them. First off, and we'll take them in the order in which they finished here. So first off, as I get my tabs in order here, let's see. All right. We have Florida 7, Alabama 6. Flip over here. Alabama up 5-0 after 3 innings, as you can see there on the line score. Couldn't hold it, and the key was for the real turning point was in the 5th inning. Alabama had a 2-out. There was 2 outs, nobody on. Had a 2-out error that ultimately led to 3 runs scoring. That really turned the tide and made it a 5-4 game. Now, Alabama still scored a 6th run, still obviously had the opportunity to win that game, but the big blow was a Brody Donay 2-run home run in the bottom of the 7th that put Florida on top for good, and they held on for the win. Good bullpen for Florida. Luke McNeely, Jake Clemente helped make up for the fact that Liam Peterson was not his normal self. As we scroll down here a little bit, you can see 5 earned runs in 5 innings. He was on the mound for those 5 early runs for Alabama. So, we've talked about before how important getting good starts from Liam Peterson is for Florida. They didn't get that, but the bullpen picks him up. I wasn't all rosy though for Florida. The injuries just kind of keep coming. Luke Heyman has I believe it was a fractured wrist. He was seen in a sling late in that game. That's obviously not great because that's obviously a guy who's been arguably the most important bat in SEC play. Just with how hot he's been the last 10 weeks basically. And Justin Nato also left the game with an injury. So the hits just keep on coming for Florida, and yet they just keep winning. Like they just keep trucking through all these injuries. They're now down, a couple more guys and running short on options, frankly, in the position player side of things. But kudos to them for not folding. I was giving them kudos weeks ago for not folding with the injuries they had then. Now they have more of them. And yet the wins just kind of keep on coming. On the Alabama side, Tyler Fay pitched pretty well, deserved better. He was, victimized by that error in the 5th, so he ended up getting charged with 4 runs, but just one of them was earned. So pretty good stuff from him. That helped set up Alabama well the next 2 days with Quick and Adams on the mound. So, Bama's still in, if they can get some results this weekend, still have the potential to end up hosting. So there's still a lot to play for this weekend for Alabama. But both these teams, in solid position to get into the postseason, obviously when it's all said and done. And from the Florida side, of course, if they can sweep this, maybe they get, into the hosting conversation. We'll have to see how the rest of the weekend goes, but that is on the table. The other game of the day, as I flip over here and pull it up, is Vanderbilt 8, Kentucky 7. This was this is a wild one. It's a walk-off 3-run home run for Braden Holcomb, 2-strike 3-run home run. He was down 0-2, and then I think it went 1-2. And then he hits just an absolute bomb to left center to walk it off. That's the second straight Vanderbilt home game in which Braden Holcomb has had a walk-off hit. So 2 in a row there. He's on a hot streak as far as that goes. Just an absolute clutch moment and crushed the ball, frankly. Kentucky got great work from Jackson Novy in relief, but then turned the ball over to Simon Gregerson in the ninth, and that's who the home run was off of. But Gregerson's been solid this year, so you don't, that's a move that Kentucky's going to make, basically 10 out of 10 times, especially when Novi had been stretched as far as he had. So, for Kentucky, it's some themes that we've seen this season. It's another one-run loss. It's another time when the bullpen just couldn't quite lock it down late in the game. We've seen that a time or two. For Vanderbilt, though, it's kind of like a new trend. Like the offense is increasingly bailing out the pitching staff. Now, not all the time. This is still a pitching-centric team, but the lineup has shown some signs of improvement, some signs of being able to do things like this, where you scroll down here and, Austin Nye doesn't get out of the first inning in his first weekend start after being the midweek guy all season. And yet Vanderbilt finds a way to win that game. And that's something that earlier in the season, I don't know if they could have done with the offense being what it was then. So big win there for Vanderbilt. Good stuff there as they continue to, I think they're in good shape for a top 8, but they're trying to get as high as they can on that totem pole, if you will. So fun game there between Vanderbilt and Kentucky. All right, let's go to some comments here. Eric Simmons says, I think Texas A&M's at-large hopes are all but gone after losing to Georgia last night. What do you think? When the Aggies hit, they don't pitch, and when they pitch, they don't hit. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the classic conundrum for teams, is that it seems like, it's hard to get all facets of your game going at the same time. But yeah, the postseason hopes are all but dead. The best A&M can do is get the last 2 games of the series and finish with 12 SEC wins. That would be short. They would need to get something done in Hoover. They also, let me check the RPI here. Pardon me while I scroll the RPI. I mean, their RPI actually went down yesterday. I thought maybe just by playing the number 1 overall RPI team that maybe they would go up. And maybe they did go up, but maybe other teams just, went up further around them and pushed them down. But yeah, so their RPI is worse than it was before the game. So yeah, their RPI is toast. Like all but dead is a good way to put it, and maybe just dead. Obviously, you have a chance to win a trophy, and would any of us really be shocked if A&M ripped off 5 straight wins? To lift that trophy? No, I don't think anybody would be shocked by that. But in terms of being able to get enough done without lifting the trophy, I think those hopes are probably just about toast. Eric, you also mentioned the turnaround for the 1-11 in SEC play, 13-3 since. I mean, you're right. Just incredible coaching job there by Kevin O'Sullivan and his staff. It's kind of what they do. They did it last year. And again, this is a team that, like, despite all of it, if they end up in Omaha, you're not going to be shocked at all. Steve Moser, and this is it's a Big 12 thing, but he says Kansas got a good win over West Virginia last night. Yeah, agreed. This is an SEC podcast, not a Big 12 one, but like that is an interesting win. I say podcast, more of a video. Well, it's a little bit of a video podcast. We just it doesn't have its own podcast feed. Good win for Kansas. I'm not sure it's a good win for the Big 12. Like, not that Kansas has to worry about that. Like, that's not Kansas's job. But, West Virginia was already kind of like a borderline host where it was like, well, the RPI might not be quite good enough, but if they win the Big 12, and look really good doing it, maybe they could sneak into being, to being a host just based on that. The combination of Big 12 regular season championship, because for a while they were leading by like 2, 3, 4 games, something like that. But as that starts to salt away, they've won the league. That is confirmed. But if they don't win it definitively, is that going to be enough? I think they'll still be in the mix, especially if they can win these last 2 games. But anyway, so little Big 12 sidetrack there, because I do think it matters from an SEC standpoint that West Virginia is another one of those teams. If you're Alabama or Florida, we'll talk about that in a second. Ole Miss, one of these teams that's trying to wiggle its way into hosting. What other teams do? Around that part? it ends up mattering. So, West Virginia getting knocked off of that pedestal, could help someone else. Help someone else get there? Steve, I see your other comment. Yeah, I mean, we get into plenty of just general college baseball discussion here, but it is an SEC centric show. So I get that. So I get the, SEC fatigue for those who are outside of the conference and don't have skin in the game with the conference. So I get that. So feel free to hang around. We get into plenty of big picture college baseball stuff, but it is SEC centric. Patrick Yankee says, such a gut punch for my Batcats last night. Going to stay positive and realize this team is capable of winning a regional and playing with anybody. That 1-2 center cut fastball hurt my soul. Yeah, I mean, yeah, understandable. But you're right in that it doesn't change anything in the big picture here. That look in Nick McKay and Ben Cleaver, you've got two starting pitchers that on their best days can shut down just about anybody. Cleaver in particular. So you've got that. The reality is you're not going to see anything in a regional that you haven't already dealt with, right? Because you've been playing an SEC schedule. So, if you're a 2 seed, you're not going to see your host team is not going to be anything that you haven't seen already. So, yeah, I think there's reason to be positive about just the general, the general position they're in. And here's the thing too, is this is the first time this program, assuming they get in, and I think they're fine, but the committee has done things I don't agree with before. This will be the third year in a row they've made a regional. And before last year, they'd never gone in back-to-back years. So I would also urge you, Patrick, not to lose sight of, maybe this year could have been more if you win a few more one-run games, coulda, shoulda, woulda, of course. But let's not, I would urge you not to lose sight of the bigger picture here, which is, look, this is a program that, in the past, every time they'd win a regional, there'd be like, you could set your watch to the fact that there was going to be a pretty extensive rebuild immediately afterward. And that's not happening anymore at Kentucky, at least in this iteration, the last few years. So really good season for Kentucky, just in the context of the history of Kentucky baseball. So still positive momentum for the Wildcats in general. Walter Clayton enthusiast, and don't blame me on that one. That guy's a lot of fun to watch. What are your takes on Florida's hosting chances? I mean, I think you have to sweep. Now, I say that if you're at 15 wins and you rip off in a thing where you win the SEC tournament, then okay, but unless you do that, 16 SEC wins tends to be the barrier to entry on getting into the discussion to host. So if you sweep this series over Alabama, then you're in the discussion, and then we can have the discussion moving forward in Hoover. But barring a run to the tournament championship, getting to 16 wins feels like a bare minimum for Florida at this point. The RPI is going to be fine. You don't really have to worry about that. Florida's RPI is sitting at 11 as of this morning. So, you just got to get the league wins. Dave says, not to get ahead of the show. No worries on that, Dave. In a lot of ways, you guys are the show. Like what I talk about kind of navigates your questions. Not to get ahead of the show, but great to see Hunter Hines tie the MSU home run record with 2 in the 9th. Still one more to go, but he's been thinking about that all season. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, he's a human being, and coaches can tell you all the time, and even players say, oh, I'm not worried about that. I'm not. But let's face it, guy's a human being. If I was chasing that kind of record, it would be on my mind too. Maybe not the most important thing on my mind, but it would sneak in. Of course it would, right? I mean, you're talking about a guy who's up there with Will Clark and Rafael Palmeiro in that statistic in Mississippi State history. And those are not just 2 of the best players in Mississippi State baseball history, but I mean, 2 of the best pure hitters that baseball has ever produced, right? I mean, when you talk about pure hitters. So, I mean, that's really rarefied air. So sure, of course, you're going to think about that kind of stuff. Yeah. So good stuff there. And I'm not going to be overly critical of State that they chose to kick a field goal. They're up 21-7. They went for a field goal instead of going for it on 4th down. I'm not going to be too critical of that play call because they ended up winning 24-7. So, all's well that ends well, of course. Yeah, we'll talk about plenty of State hitters as well when it comes to talk about hitters of the day, because they had a lot of options. All right. Let's see. Jack Crittenberger says Cat's going to need to win a couple in the tourney. I mean, maybe if you want to feel like extra safe about it, yeah, I think I assume you're talking about Hoover, but if they want to feel extra safe about it, but I do like their resume overall. As I scroll on the RPI 34. Don't get swept this weekend. I think because if you get to 14, I think the easier path is less of worrying about having to win a couple games in Hoover and just getting a game this weekend. I think is critical, because then you could probably just stop worrying about it after that, right? So that seems like the smoothest path to being able to breathe easy ahead of regionals. Patrick Yankee said he was the Kentucky fan we were talking about just a minute ago. I'm extremely proud of the team in season. I realize for sure this is the best 3-year run in the history of the program, according to my guy Derek Terry. Derek Terry, friend of mine as well, does a really good job. If you're a Kentucky fan and you're not reading Derek Terry's newsletter, you should be. Although I imagine most of you are. If you're watching this show to follow the season closely enough, chances are, if you're a Kentucky fan, you're watching or reading Derek Terry. Eric says, I think 13 SEC teams make the NCAA tournament. Yeah, I think that's right. That the 14th would have been A&M, but as we talked about, they're pretty much toast. And then, of course, you got Mizzou and South Carolina. So, yep, it seems pretty solidly 13, especially now that, Mississippi State got their 13th win last night. So, look, again, the committee could throw us a curveball. They've done that before, but, if precedent holds, at least with what we saw most recently with last year, I'm betting on 13 SEC. All right, let's get to hitter of the day. And if you have comments, keep them coming. I'll sweep through comments again before we get out of here after we do hitter and pitcher of the day. Pull it up here. All right, it was a long list, so I had to minimize I still didn't quite get it all on the same screen, but we'll scroll one time. Hitter of the day is Ace Reese from Mississippi State. I mean, frankly, I could have picked any of these hitters from Mississippi State. I probably also left a couple guys off this list for State that could have been on here. You just got to draw the line somewhere. But Ace Reese, 3 for 6 with a double, 2 homers, a walk, and 4 RBIs. Reed Stallman had a couple home runs. Noah Sullivan went 3 for 5. Hunter Hines, we talked about, 2 home runs, including a historic one. So, yeah, big day offensively. You score 24 runs, you're going to have guys in this list. I think they had 23 hits as a team. That's really impressive. And, it was 10 runs in the 9th, but okay, even without that, they still would have won 14-7. So, or was it 25-7? I think I had that score wrong, actually. Yeah, 25-7. Excuse me. I made a field goal joke, and it was actually just based on incorrect information. That's embarrassing. But yeah, so, okay. So, 25-7. But yeah, anytime you have 25 runs, you're going to have guys in this list. Simple as that. Going down the list now, Riley Nelson, 3 for 4 with a homer for Vanderbilt. Cole Hage on the Kentucky side of that, 2 for 5 with 2 doubles and a stolen base. For Florida, Brody Donay, 2 for 4, that big home run, 3 runs batted in. Nice game for Ty Evans as well, 2 for 3 with a double and a walk. Robbie Burnett in the 10-6 win over Texas A&M, really filled up the box score here, 3 for 4 with a double, a home run, a hit by pitch, stolen base, 3 RBI. Now, he was taken out of the game late for a defensive replacement. It sounded like, and my buddy Anthony Dasher tweeted about this, so you can go watch the video after the game of him interviewing Wes Johnson about it, but it sounded like it wasn't anything serious. It kind of sounded precautionary and maybe like just wanted to make sure he was good, and especially since it was late in the game and, they had Bryce Clavon, who's a good defensive player, good runner. They could bring him in defensively and feel like you were still going to be comfortable winning that game. So, maybe if it was the 5th inning, it would have been different. Maybe they would have had him play through it. But as it was, it sounds like, barring something changing based on what we're hearing, sounds like that's nothing serious there. On the A&M side, Wyatt Hensler, 3 for 4 with a homer and a walk. South Carolina, 6-5 win over LSU, a walk-off wild pitch. Zach Cowan uncorked a wild pitch there. 3 out of last 4 outings for Zach Cowan, not been particularly strong. You wonder if maybe fatigue starting to set in, maybe some of the scouting report stuff. Maybe there's just a really good book out on him now. But also he could just bounce back, could just be 3 rough outings. That happens as well. But South Carolina gets a walk-off wild pitch to beat LSU 6-5. Michael Braswell always seems to hit well against his former team. He went 3 for 3 with a double and a walk. A couple guys for South Carolina, though. Henry Kazmar, 2 for 3, 2 triples. Don't see that very often, and 2 walks. And then KJ Scobie, 2 for 3 with a home run. Scrolling down a little further, we'll talk about Ole Miss. They got a big win over Auburn, 9-2. They're tracking to try to end up hosting. They're tracking it on 2 fronts. One is the RPI front. They're at 17 in RPI. So probably need to do a little bit more work to get in that mix. But also, they're sitting at 15 SEC wins. Like we talked about with Florida, you'd like to get a 16th to really get into that discussion. We will, we'll see. But certainly they needed the win they got, 9-2 over Auburn. Will Furness, 3 for 5 with a double. Ryan Moorman, 2 for 3 with a hit by pitch, 3 RBIs. On the Auburn side of it, Eric Snow, 3 for 4 with a double. Texas wins the regular season title, a 7-4 win over Oklahoma. They were down for a decent bit of this game, but came alive. I mean, no surprise here. They kind of came alive offensively once Kyson Witherspoon left the game. That's kind of how, you just kind of wait out Kyson a lot of times. They did a pretty nice job against him to make sure he wasn't able to go super deep in the game. But on the Oklahoma side, Easton Carmichael, 2 for 3 with a double and a walk. Tommy Farmer, the 4th, 3 for 4 with a double for Texas. And then Tennessee and Arkansas, the late game in the SEC, a 10-7 win for Tennessee as the pendulum in the SEC continues to swing back and forth on these teams. Tennessee, we start, folks start to ask some difficult questions about Tennessee of late, and now they win the opener against Arkansas. We'll see where the rest of the series goes, but certainly a big win to open it there. Dean Curley, 3 for 4. Dalton Bargo, 2 for 4 with a pair of home runs. On the Arkansas side, Logan Maxwell, 3 for 4, and Reese Robinette, 2 for 3 with 2 walks. All right, let's flip over to pitcher of the day here. I'm closing this screen, so my face is going to get big. There it is, for better or worse. All right, much shorter list here. The pitcher of the day is Hunter Elliott for Ole Miss. Kind of returned to form. He's been solid this season, but had a lot of outings where he wasn't efficient enough to get deep. Walks have been a problem from time to time for him, but this outing was just kind of classic Hunter Elliott. 7 shutout innings, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts in that win for Ole Miss over Auburn. Other candidates, Brennan Cyber. Forgot to put the little relief pitcher tag in here. He came in behind Austin Nye for Vanderbilt and really kind of quieted things down to give Vanderbilt a chance to get back in that game when Kentucky took a 5-0 lead. That was the other thing, is that, when I talked about that as game of the day, I forgot to mention Kentucky was up 5-0 in that game at one point. So it kind of looked like Kentucky was going to cruise to a win. Didn't turn out that way, but Brennan Cyber was a big part of that. 3 1/3 innings, just a 1 unearned run given up. Jackson Novy on the Kentucky side of it. Apparently, I'm just forgetting to put the relief pitcher tag on all of these. 4 strong innings, 4 scoreless innings for Kentucky, and it looked like he'd really kind of salted that game away, coming in after Nate Harris. It was not to be, though. More relief work. Luke McNeely, Jake Clemente for Florida combined for 4 strong innings, giving up just 1 unearned run. Nate Williams in relief from Mississippi State. 3 innings pitched, just 1 hit allowed, no runs, no walks, 4 strikeouts. And most impressive for me, he threw 41 pitches and 35 of them were strikes. Now look, I know he was pitching with a big lead. I get that. But still, to throw 41 pitches and have 6 balls thrown, to not have more balls just not come out of your hand right or overthrow them, just to not by accident have more balls than that is impressive work there. And then Kyson Witherspoon, kind of his typical strong start, 6 1/3, 5 hits, 3 runs, just 2 earned, 1 walk and 8 strikeouts. But Hunter Elliott, the pitcher of the day for Ole Miss. All right, let's wrap up some comments here. Oh, this is a good question for Jack Crittenberger. Who are the most exciting 3 hitters in Hoover? 1 catcher, 1 infielder, 1 outfielder. Let's see. That's a good question. Let me ruminate on that a little bit, Jack, and see if something comes to me. We'll circle back to that before we get out of here. So I'm going to do a little cheat sheet. If you'll give me a minute, I'm going to pull up like individual stat leaders in the conference, because that'll help me make sure I don't just totally forget somebody. All right, so we'll come back to that. It's a very good question. Will college baseball kill the shift in the next few years? Hank from Texas. I don't think so, for a couple of reasons. One is that the college baseball it's decentralized, right? So like the NCAA is kind of this organization that organizes postseason stuff. And yes, there are certain sets of rules, but stuff on the competition side isn't necessarily just like brought down from the NCAA. So the NCAA can't just come down and say, it's official, no more shifts. It has to go through a process through the competition committee or the rules committee. Not sure which one that would fall under. I guess that'd probably be rules committee. So it has to go through a bureaucratic process. And also, by the way, college, not just baseball, but athletics, tends to get governed conference to conference. So that's why we have some conferences that have replay, some that don't. So things tend to be different across the board. So that's one reason. And the other is just MLB was trying to solve a problem that college baseball doesn't have. So part of why they got rid of the shift in MLB was to try to get more offense that wasn't home runs, right? It was so much of the offense in Major League Baseball was just a bunch of home runs. College baseball, especially now, like the last couple of years has been pretty home run centric, but this year the home run is down. And there's offense scored all kinds of ways, including with bad defense. I mean, these are college defenses, right? So the defense is not as clean. So I don't think there's a problem to solve from that standpoint. And also, it's one thing in Major League Baseball where we have just reams of data on every hitter. Now, we have a lot of data in college, a lot more than they had even probably 10 years ago. So that's why you see teams shift against teams they've never played before, because the data exists, but it's not as much, right? So it's a good question. And college does mimic Major League Baseball in a lot of ways. Pitch clock was kind of a thing that was filtered down and things like that. But I don't think the shift, I could be wrong, but I don't think the shift is going to be one of those things that follows, or the lack of a shift, I guess I should say, is going to be one of those things that follows. All right. Yeah, Kazmar and Scobie for South Carolina were indeed clutch. Totally agree there. Had to have those. Samuel Bond says, with how Florida and Mississippi State have been playing, they're going to be two very upset hosts. Agreed. They're looking like two of the hottest teams in the country. Florida's run has been incredible. Yeah, agreed. If Florida doesn't get to the host line, if you're Florida State, because that's the obvious place to send them, but whoever it is, they're not going to be thrilled to see Florida show up in the regional, and same for Mississippi State. Some poor ACC host, that's just my assumption, but maybe not, is going to be with either of those teams is going to be not too happy. Samuel also says, considering a sweep and reaching 15-15, do you think State will be in consideration for the top 25 after erasing the slow start versus Texas and LSU? Yeah, certainly. They'll be in consideration. Whether or not they get there, will be another thing. But if they're able to sweep Missouri, get to 500 in the SEC, they'll certainly be in our conversation. Eric Simmons says, I think LSU can be a top 8 national seed if they win the next 2 games against South Carolina and make a deep run in the SEC tournament. I don't even think the deep run in the SEC tournament is necessary, Eric. I think, you win this series. I mean, yes, their RPI on paper is borderline for a national seed, but 2 things. One, that would give them 19 SEC wins. It would be pretty unprecedented for a 19-win SEC team that has an RPI that is in that range to not get a national seed. But then second, we talked yesterday about J.R. Teagues, the committee chair. I listened to that podcast when I was making my drive yesterday, and someone mentioned it yesterday on our show. Pardon me, but I forget who it was. But mentioned that J.R. Teagues sounds like he's maybe not enamored of the RPI as much as some others have been. And I agree. It sounds like, yes, the RPI is a tool. They're not going to ignore it. But he sounded much more interested in okay, RPI is one thing, but what else you got, right? And if it's LSU, who's right now ranked number 1 in the country, if they win this series against South Carolina, they will still be number 1 in the country. With an RPI in the, around 8, I would think you take the RPI and say, okay, that's one data point, but it doesn't fully address what LSU's season has been. Now, I don't expect them to be the number 1 overall seed just because we have them ranked, number 1. That's not how that works. But I would expect them to be a top 8. But again, could be wrong. And then Nicholas Doherty, good morning, Nicholas. He says, if you had to buy stock right now on one team, LSU would be the most Mizzou really cheap. What stock are you buying to make some money and make a run? Oh, that's a really good question. You guys are bringing it today. Give me a second. Let's see. I mean, I guess I'd buy Florida, right? Because they'd be like kind of a middle tier stock. So yeah, I think I'd buy Florida just because we've seen this movie before, right? I mean, it's similar in a lot of ways to last year, not every way. Because remember last year, Florida had to win the final series of the season against Georgia on the road, not just to get enough SEC wins, but to finish over 500. Because if you don't finish over 500, you're not eligible for an at-large bid. So so there was that. So it's similar in some ways, but in others not so much. But we've just seen this, and they have the raw materials, right? I think there's confidence they get Colby Shelton back in some way for the postseason. You've got a real ace in Liam Peterson. You've got Aiden King as a freshman who seems like he's starting to figure things out. Not that he was ever bad this season, but he had some speed bumps, but he really looks good. You've got a real dude in the bullpen in Jake Clemente. Kind of feels like Brandon Neely was last year. Luke McNeely is coming on strong in the bullpen. So I just like those pieces. I don't love the lack of depth right now because of the injuries, but it just feels like that's a safe buy. Like, I don't know that I'm going to get the best return on that, right? Like, I still don't think I would pick the Gators to win the national title, but just as a pretty safe buy that I think could win a regional and get through a super to get to Omaha, I'd feel pretty good about that. So I think that's the direction I'd go, but that's a very good question. All right, we're going to circle back to Jack's question here. So 3 most exciting hitters in Hoover that you're looking forward to seeing: 1 catcher, 1 infielder, 1 outfielder. And I'll try to give you some answers that are interesting beyond just kind of the most the most famous guys. So at catcher, I'm going to go Ike Irish. Obviously, he's a famous guy, but I'm going to go Ike Irish because right now he's on the short list of the best hitters in the SEC right now, and by extension the country. And he's kind of done it quietly, I would say. But his numbers in SEC play have been fantastic. He's hitting almost 400 in SEC play, 398. As we sit here today, 10 home runs in SEC play. So that's a guy that I'm going to look at, and he might play more outfield than catcher, but he's going to get drafted as a catcher. So we'll call him a catcher for these purposes. He might catch, in the postseason, but he's been playing a lot of outfield because Chase Fralick, the freshman there, has been great too. So a lot of options there, and Fralick is a player to watch in his own right. Infielder. Let me make sure I'm not missing somebody. Easton Carmichael's another good shout out, a catcher for Oklahoma, by the way. Infielder. Give me Ace Reese from Mississippi State. Kind of the same reasons. I mean, he's just knocking the cover off the ball right now. 13 home runs in SEC play. That leads all SEC hitters in home runs in SEC play. The 13 for Ace Reese from Mississippi State. So let's go with that one. And it's going to be a Mississippi State team that I feel like is going to make a push in Hoover, to make sure they just get themselves in the field. I mean, if they sweep Mizzou, they're probably fine, but could they host, right? If they go to Hoover and they lift a trophy at the end or get to a final, like, that's an open question, but I do think they're going to go there to play and to win. And then in the outfield, give me Cade Snell for Alabama. I'm counting him as an outfielder. He can kind of play everywhere, but talk about pure hitters. Like, it's not the most physical guy. It's not he doesn't have the most power. He's not like an electric athlete, but like, the dude just knows how to hit. He controls the bat so well. He has a plan every time he's at the plate. And frankly, if not for him, because Justin LeBron, who probably would have been the infielder I would have highlighted had he continued to hit like he has all season, might have been just the obvious choice there, but it hasn't been an easy regular season for him. So I say that to say, had it not been for Cade Snell, like, I don't think Alabama is a postseason team, because that's how good Cade Snell has been. He's hitting around 400. So again, not the most famous guy, not the biggest prospect, none of that, but just a really, really good hitter there. So tried to give you some names that are a little bit off the board so that they're, so that you've got some names beyond just the famous ones there. I got you, Sam. I remembered to circle back. There you go. Sven Kreuzberg says, "What the heck was this in Como last night?" Yeah, it was. Yeah, it looked like Mississippi State was going to run rule. Then Mizzou wakes up and hits a couple balls hard and hits some balls out of the ballpark, and then in the ninth, 10 runs. It was a wacky day. I didn't see much of that game, but I heard the wind was blowing out, and that's a windy place, and most of the time it blows in. But it was blowing out, and that's the way it goes. So yeah, so one, I see Sven's. He mentioned Stephen Milam for most exciting infielder watch, and Sam Does says the question was about hitting though, not fielding. I will say the thing about Milam though is it's just been a real struggle for him offensively in SEC play, and I bring that up not to necessarily just to be negative about it, but it's just been such a surprise for me because last season he was so solid, and I thought he was going to take another step forward to be kind of like a superstar because for a smaller guy, he hits for a decent amount of power, and I thought this was going to be he already kind of broke out as a freshman, but I thought this was going to be a year where he makes another leap and really kind of helps carry that lineup. And that just hasn't been the case. Still time though, to make an impact, and make the most of the season. Todd Harris, just another heartbreaking 1-run loss for my Cats. Middle fastball at 1-2 is just brutal. Yeah. Hoping they can battle back to still win one. Yeah. That's the thing, Todd, you're looking for one win, cause then you can not be stressed in Hoover that the committee's going to, that without a win, the committee's going to find a reason to leave you out. So I'm with you. Getting a win this weekend for Kentucky is big. I mean, you've got McKay and Cleaver on the mound. I presume those guys I'm checking the scheduled starters. Yeah, you've got McKay and Cleaver the next couple of days. I have to assume you'll get one of those, and then you'll be sitting pretty, leaving Hoover and headed to regionals. All right, folks, that is going to do it for this edition of Weekend Waypoints, a production of SEC Extra over at d1baseball.com. Thanks to Academy Sports and Outdoors for sponsoring this and every Weekend Waypoints. 2 more episodes this weekend, folks. It's a 4-episode weekend because we start on Thursday. So I'll be back tomorrow morning to recap Friday's action around the SEC and take a look ahead at Saturday's action, Saturday finales around the SEC. So Sunday's show will just be full recap, no look ahead there, which reminds me I didn't give you a game of the day today. Give me Auburn Ole Miss, Sam Dutton versus Riley Maddox. Dutton obviously has kind of been must-see TV this whole season. And then Riley Maddox has had a couple really good outings in the last 3 or 4 outings for him. And I'm kind of curious to see if maybe he's figured something out, or maybe it was just those are one-offs. Maybe we'll learn a little bit about that today. So, all right, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow morning. Enjoy the baseball. See ya.